Okay, welcome to Coder Radio. It's Mike again, as always. Today we have Zach Llyod from Warp on again, and Ben Holmes, who is their developer guru, I want to say. Even though it's not his real title, I just like it. I think it sounds better. It's pretty good. We're talking about their relatively new Oz agent system, which is, if you're familiar with the concept of agentic AI, it's Warp's take on it. Pretty cool stuff. It's accessible remotely via a web app. You can, of course, use Warp Terminal and the web and mobile. They have some interesting ideas. They're really pushing this forward in terms of user interface in a way that I think is going to make this a lot more accessible. This is definitely one of the areas where, there's, of course, a lot of AI hype out there. We talk about it all the time. But this area of the agentic AIs, particularly those that can manage other AIs, is really interesting to me. And I think of all the stuff that, we know some of the stuff in the AI world is a little bit hypey, right? A little vapory. I think this is actually going to stay, where you have one agent managing multiple other agents. Think of it, for lack of a better term, if you're in the DevOps world, as like a Kubernetes orchestration type situation. So these are early days for this stuff. So, take everything with a grain of salt that I say about my crazy plan to how to orchestrate these AIs. They obviously have their way of doing it, and it seems to be working for them, so that's good. I'll have to check it out. Again, we are, as always, brought to you by the Mad Botter. It's my company. You all know it. We do manage your data end to end, and we do custom software development. I'm still running that promo because I think this airs on the 6th. It's currently the 2nd. So I'm running the promo, 10% off for Coder Radio listeners through the end of April. And that's on anything. That's on Alice. That's on Vorpal. That's on the full package. That's on BotterKit, which you guys don't know about yet. But yeah, host your own data, guys. You need your own data lake. You don't want to be at the mercy of one of these very, very expensive proprietary vendors. And you might want to be behind your firewall. Might be a good idea to think about that given today's world. So check that out. Themadbotter.com is the easiest way to do that. And I'm not going to hold you much longer. Just check out that Discord. And okay, here's the guys from Warp. All right, we have a rare trio today. I'm here with Ben Holmes and Zach Llyod of Warp, of course. We all remember Zach, right? So we're talking about something really new that I've gotten to play with a little, Oz, as in I'm assuming the Wizard of. How you guys doing?
We're doing great. Thank you thanks for having us on. It's good to be back.
So let's just jump right. Hey, Ben, why don't you start us off? Give us the kind of TLDR pitch on what Oz exactly is.
Yeah, totally. And I meant to introduce myself. Ben Holmes, developer relations lead here at Warp. Oz is a agent orchestration platform that helps you use agents in every touch point outside of your terminal. I'm sure that you've played with agents locally all the time with Claude Code, Codex, Warp's agent, whatever you happen to use. Oz is our answer for getting things off of your computer. So if you needed to tag in an agent to plan out an approach while you're having a Slack conversation, you could trigger a cloud agent that way. You could trigger agents on a schedule. Maybe you need to run weekly reports or detect fraudulent activity, which is one of our workflows. And any other touch point that you need an agent to be deployed and you don't want to be at your computer, Oz is kind of the platform to help you do that.
Interesting. So when you say not at my computer, is there some sort of like remote, mobile tie-in here or?
Yeah. So anytime you trigger an agent, it's going to spin up in a cloud environment. So we've set these up as configurable Docker containers that can include all the context that you need, including coding repositories, CLI tools, maybe Node or Golang so that it can test its work. And we give you just a flexible SDK to trigger agents to run inside of those environments from anywhere. So mobile could be one of them, certainly. I've definitely caught myself triggering an agent either from a Slack conversation on my phone or directly from the web app that we also have if you just want to trigger an agent manually that way. And it will just start working on whatever you prompt it with or any skills that you embed that you want it to reference.
Interesting. So all right. So maybe we should take just a quick separation on how this works, right? So if I'm in Warp proper, I'm in the terminal, I say, I don't know, write me some mini tests for this Ruby application, right? That's going to happen right on my machine, correct?
Yeah, that's right. With Warp's like standard agent, the standard mode of execution is it happens locally on your laptop.
Right. But the problem is I have to tell it to do that each time. With an agent, I could say every time you see I'm sure there's a trigger, right? Every time you see me push to staging on GitHub, right? A staging branch, let's say it's a branch name, run these tests sort of situation. And then if it passes, do some sort of deployment. Is that the kind of thing you can do?
Ben, you want to take this? I don't know when I should talk and when Ben should talk. Yeah. Yeah. Basically, yes. So it's super flexible. So you can configure Oz agents to run as part of your CI flows, like you said. So if you want an agent that runs when you push code, you can have an agent that does code review. You can have an agent that does security scanning, anything like that. But you can also run these agents ad hoc. So actually directly from Warp. For your example, if you wanted to, you don't have to run that agent locally. That first one that you talked about, you could actually just fire it off in the cloud. And the cool thing about running it in the cloud is, it's like it runs even if you close your laptop. You can check it from your mobile phone. You can kind of run like an unlimited number of them without it clogging up your machine, which is a problem that we're seeing people have more and more. Where it's like people are multitasking so much with agents that they're like, running out of disk space and RAM and stuff. So, and then the other thing you can do with these is like, you don't have to put them in GitHub or Slack, or like you can, but they're fully programmable. So if you like literally wanted to set up a system where it's like anytime, something happens in your web app, you run an agent to do something, there's like a REST API and an SDK for doing that. So it's a super flexible way of taking like the coding agent that you have in Warp and just being like, okay, I want to like program against it or have it automate stuff. That's the general concept.
Interesting. Okay. So can you, either of you, I guess maybe Ben's probably the right person for this, dive into when you say it's programmable and customizable, right? So I don't need to actually piggyback off of GitHub if I don't want to. What are the boundaries of that?
Yeah, I mean, you certainly can trigger an agent from a GitHub runner. That's actually one of our many use cases. We set up like a code review agent that'll run whenever a PR gets triggered. So if you want to like run agents inside of GitHub using the Oz runner in order to handle that, you can certainly do so. But the boundaries of like where you can trigger these things, I mean, it's pretty soft. As Zach was mentioning, you can trigger them using the REST API or the SDK. So if you wanted to build like a application code that would trigger it, you could certainly do that. Really, it's really just wherever you want to deploy it inside of your systems. And another thing you mentioned was automations. I should mention that there's a built-in scheduler with this as well. So if you're used to piggybacking on GitHub for like setting up a cron job in order to have an agent run something, you no longer have to do that through a GitHub action. You could just go to the web portal or your Warp terminal, wherever you want to set it up. And you could say, I want this agent to run every morning at 10 a.m. And I want it to run inside of this environment that has our client and our server-side code bases cloned into that environment. And then every time it wakes up at 10 a.m., I want it to, for example, go through and look for stale feature flags. That's a common one. So maybe you want to set that up on a weekly cron or a daily cron, where it goes through all the code that's been committed across those repositories, analyze it, and look for any stale feature flags that have existed in the code base for a month or two, which is very common across all applications. And maybe come up with a plan on what feature flags to remove if you just wanted to do the research step. Or you could have it go all the way and say, I'm going to remove the top 5 stale feature flags and open a pull request for your team to review. And you can make it as autonomous as you want. So you could have it open a PR, link to the planning document that it wrote, open it and ping and assign reviewers if you have specific reviewers that you want to be looking at that action. However deep you want to go, you certainly can. We're really just trying to give people the primitives to figure out what workflows are actually useful. And I think some of the early wins have definitely been using the scheduler to handle all of these cleanup tasks that you don't want to trigger manually yourself.
Makes a ton of sense. So let me tell you what I guess I bastardize Oz for, and you guys can tell me how much of a sick weirdo I am. All right. So I had this already working in Claude, but a very rudimentary version. So what I did was you're probably not familiar, but I'm just for folks listening. Clay is a kind of data portal broker service that salespeople use to basically find prospects, right?
We know Clay. We use Clay.
Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. Great.
Yep.
So, great. I live in Slack because I'm a slave to, now Salesforce apparently is Slack, but, I've been using Slack since they were a scrappy little startup. And I basically run everything that's not dev for my business, right? Not technical, via Slack. So I created an Oz agent that runs a very small custom Ruby application because my loyalty to shiny things continues. All it does, well, not all it does, but I can go into Slack any given day. And I have a little app. It's called the Bandersnatch, keeping in line with my little Alice in Wonderland motif I got going. And for super nerds out there, it's actually the logo for it is the picture of the dude Rumpelstiltskin from Once Upon a Time. I'm really bleeding my weird fantasy stuff here. It's an internal application that's running on Oz. I do /Bandersnatch in a specific channel on it's a private channel in my Slack, right? And what it does is it gives me 3 buttons using the native Slack, render JSON as UI thing. And the 3 buttons are just 3 verticals, the 3 types of customers I sell to. I click the main one usually, right, or anyone, and it goes into Clay and it finds me no less than 10 prospects that fit certain profiles, which I can amend on the fly from that vertical. It then asks me if I want to enrich them, which then goes back to Clay with them and gets their LinkedIn profile information, any recent status updates, any news for the company they work for that might be relevant to the data management products I sell. And from there, it then goes right back into Trello, which is what I use as my makeshift CRM for outreach. Creates them, labels them, puts everything I got in there, and reminds me if I don't reach out. Is that a weird use case for this?
No. I think that's a very normal use case. It's actually matching what a lot of our internal teams are doing as well. I myself, like on the developer experience side, we've been using these Oz agents not for code, but for like going through our community mentions and suggesting like, should we engage with this person? And if so, what should the reply be? And if we want those replies to improve, maybe it makes a pull request to improve its own skills on how it drafts those replies. So we've set this thing up in a very pluggable way where it's not actually writing any code. It's really just waking up. It's looking at all these mentions and it's deciding what to do. Similar to enrichment. It's just like these agents are super useful for connecting one tool to another tool and doing all the work in the middle. And if you want it to write code, you certainly can.
Yeah, and I should have mentioned in the LinkedIn enrichment flow, it does actually suggest, let's say they just got promoted, right? So I'm looking at like CTOs, director of technologies, people like that. Oh, congratulations on your promotion. It like suggests to me a good opening message. But go ahead, Zach.
So I was going to say, it totally does not need to write code. But what's cool about having it actually be a coding agent is that it like gives it a superpower, so that if it in the course of doing whatever you want it to do, it decides the best way to do it is by writing code, it's really, really good at doing that. And so, even for just like normal knowledge work tasks, I find that these agents sometimes will be like, okay, actually the best way to do this isn't necessarily to just like use the raw LLM response. It might be to like write myself a small Python script that like scrapes websites and like analyzes the data. And it's a pretty magical power when a coding agent it does like any kind of knowledge work task. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's super interesting, right? The coding side I think makes a ton of sense, but it's funny that you guys mentioned that you're doing something similar with your social messages, because we have a large group of people I think are going independent now, either because of layoffs or just because of work from home, how easy it is. And more I'm getting emails and I'm having conversations with folks who are like, I built this SaaS or this B2B thing or even consumer app, and I just really hate I'm having a hard time dealing with customer service, right? People send me a million questions and I forget, and then they get mad or whatever the person's issue is. It seems like an obvious use case for these agents to at least do the first line triage.
100%. Yeah, I think what we're seeing is that these agents are going into every function of the business, including our customer service, where we have a pretty significant problem with fraud and abuse, where people script the creation of accounts to try to get higher free AI limits. And then sometimes these people have the audacity when we block them to reach out to our support and be like, I can't believe you blocked. Exactly. Yeah. And so it's crazy. And so it creates a pretty big support burden for dealing with people who in the first place are violating our terms of service. And so we have put agents throughout this entire process of agents can sort of analyze the database. They can look at the patterns of usage. They can look at signals around IP and all other things that might indicate fraud. And then by the time someone on our support team actually looks at one of these, inbound support requests, we have the agent has put together a whole risk profile on the person, and an engineer didn't build this. The person who built this is the person who is like handling the support request. So it's like, it's like an amazingly empowering thing to let people like take the parts of their job that they're just like wasting a ton of time on manually and just like automate it. It's pretty neat. And we're seeing it. We don't just see it in support. We see it like the person who runs like our brand and creative direction has built an entire sort of SaaS tool for managing all of our brand assets. Ben, have you seen this? What Chris built? It's so cool. It's like a piece of software we could have been paying like 10 grand a year for or something. And he built it, and it's exactly for our workflow. And so these things are like popping up like crazy internally at Warp. And it's often the people who are not engineers and not in engineering functions who feel like most empowered to build this kind of stuff now. It's really neat.
Okay, so we've said a lot of things here about what you can do, but
yep.
I guess, Ben, what is the minimum expertise someone needs to be effective with Oz?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that the minimum is quite low, because I do feel like, echoing what Zach said, some of the most powerful automations we built so far have not come out of the engineering team. They've come out of creative, marketing, developer experience, support, all of these other areas that need some way to automate their work. And we've kind of made the interface to set up these Oz agents very agentic, even down to creating an environment to spin these things up. You can talk to the agent and craft the environment with it. Like, oh, I need an environment. It needs these repositories, probably needs these tools. Or if you're not a developer, you could kind of just say, I just need an environment, and then we'll figure it out from there. And the agent can self-update depending on what is needed. Either way, you can kind of go back and forth with an agent to get it deployed. And a lot of early success can just come from writing some skill files, making sure the agent has access to those, giving it some API keys if it needs to access external services like customer analytics. That's a common one. If you just need to embed like access to BigQuery so that it can access all of your customer data and answer questions about it, you can have an agent set that up, guide you through the keys that you'll need in that environment, and then get an early prototype. From there, you do need some amount of perhaps engineering work to make it sustainable, something that a whole team can use with authentication gateways and things like that. But those kind of come as a step two after you have your V0 in place. So I feel like the bar to a V0 is kind of on the floor. As long as you know your domain and you know the requirements of whatever you're trying to build, you can definitely get these things spun up without the technical experience.
I agree. I think as far as like where we could make the product even easier is like that setup piece, because as of today, you still need to know a little bit of Git, where your skills live. You need to know enough to set up like a Docker thing, even though our agent will basically do it for you. I think if you're non-technical, you kind of might be like, I'm doing what now with Docker? So I think we can make it, and this is on the roadmap, I think, one notch easier. We did build a lot with the developer in mind, like some of the hero use cases that we have built for things like Ben said earlier, like jobs to clean up stale feature flags, jobs to update your documentation when you do releases, that kind of stuff. And it's interesting to see, even though we kind of built it for developers, how much these automations are clicking with general knowledge workers. So I think we'll invest in making it even easier, but it is pretty easy. Like Ben said, you just kind of need to like put your faith in the agent to get you set up. Like you just, let's make it really tangible. If you want to get set up, you can just do it directly from Warp. You just type /create environment, and that kind of gets you going. And then in Warp, you can just you can open a whole new tab that just fires off something in what we call cloud mode, which under the hood is running an Oz agent. So it's pretty easy, but I think we can make it even easier, to be honest.
So what about, and this is something I've been getting interested in, using agents to manage other agents, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. We have a whole effort around this. And actually, if you're on our preview build, I don't know if you are, Michael, you can see some of, we released like an early version of this that only works locally, where if you can explicitly invoke it by typing /orchestrate and provide a task and provide some instructions on how to divide a task up amongst multiple agents. Or if you just use our normal like /planning facility, we will now on the preview build try to decompose complicated tasks that can be done by multiple agents. And it's very early for us in doing this, but what you actually see is you sort of have a pattern of one agent that is like the orchestrator, and then you get, N other agents that are doing tasks. And you can actually, because we can control the whole UI of Warp, you don't have to use like tmux or anything like that to do this. It will just automatically create like one pane per agent, and you can watch the agents work. You don't have to watch them work. You can sort of like guide them, steer them, and they will pass messages back to the main agent. It's pretty cool. And then so that's working today on our preview build, but it's all local. And then the natural evolution of this, which we're working hard on right now, is to make this work in the cloud. And I think this is like the coolest thing. So you can sort of start a task, might be a hard task, like, hey, I want to migrate this big library. Or a good example, I just built mermaid diagram rendering in Rust. So I had agents port the entire mermaid.js into a Rust library. And I had like 20 agents doing this. And I had to kind of like manually coordinate them. But the future here is like, you're going to be able to ask sort of one agent to set up a plan that coordinates all these. It'll fire them all off in the cloud. They will do their individual pieces of work. That main agent will then sort of be responsible for merging in the component pieces, testing them, making sure they all work together. And I was able to already do this kind of manually, but the brains of doing it are going to be done by an agent pretty soon. It's really cool. It's sci-fi.
That is really cool. Yeah. So I'll tell you offline over email. I have a crazy idea for an agent, but can you persist the agent? So like, or how about have like an agent blueprint where it's, I don't know, I need a merge master agent or
yes.
In your case, a mermaid agent, right?
Yeah. So the way that we do this today, and it's going to change a little bit. The way that we do this today is if you go into Oz in the web app, you'll see there's a section called agents. And those agents are basically defined by like a skill. So exactly what you said, you could have like your merging agent, you could have your data analysis agent, and then you can invoke that agent just by like name or by path to the skill. You can set that agent on a timer, and it basically gives you a named way of referring to the agent. We're sort of improving this concept so that it's not just a skill, because I think the other important thing it needs to have actually is a bunch of permissions around what services it can access, and like it needs like a little bit more of like a first class agent concept. But I think that's like the right concept, is like you have a named agent that is like this repeatable bundle of work that has permissions that it can for things that it can access. Is that kind of what you have in mind?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, right? Kind of a prefab deal. Yeah. So there's a lot here. I know there's a lot more to learn on the website. Ben, I know you've been all over the place talking about this. There's tons of people just need to go to YouTube and find more tutorials, right? It's pretty straightforward.
Yes, we have a lot of content on this, and Ben is building more frequently. And Ben is also Ben, are you still doing those live weekly or bi-weekly onboardings into Warp and Oz?
Yes. Yeah, I actually have one coming up later today. We've been scheduling these, on our YouTube. Once a week right now, we're doing live walkthrough. It's kind of like an intro to Warp and the Oz platform. We bundle it all together. And I try to roll in if there's any like new features or things relevant to people. So if you attended one in the past and you want to see some new things in the future, it's worth coming out. But yeah, we walk through everything beginning to end, but we've also got standalone resources to onboard with all this stuff as well. Put out an intro to Warp video on YouTube and also embedded in our docs that goes through everything about the terminal. But we also have an intro to Oz, which is a video walkthrough that goes through all of that as well, with accompanying documentation for all of this stuff. So if you want to learn that yourself, or you want to ask an agent to summarize it for you, it's all available for y'all to check out.
Awesome. Well, we'll put a link to that in the show notes. And actually, Ben, if you send me that, I'll throw it in the Slack for today.
Perfect. Yeah.
So, yeah, always follow up. Zach knows the drill, but with one question, right? What is one tool you can't live without? Cannot be a tool you make. Let's start with Ben.
Ooh, a tool that I can't live without. I have a voice dictation tool that I use all around my computer. Warp has a built-in voice dictation tool, which is nice, but at this point, I just use voice dictation for every input box. Right now, I'm using something called Handy. It's really nice because it's on device, open source, doesn't cost you anything, once you install it, you have a hotkey to just talk into your computer, and it's super fast voice transcription. It's really, really good.
That's awesome. And Zach?
I feel like I probably have picked this a couple times in a row, but I'm going to pick it again because it's what I can think of. I really like Granola. It's a meeting transcription that, like, to me, the hero feature of it is it just doesn't add that stupid black box to your Zoom meeting, which I find very awkward. And then it's also really, really smart when it comes to AI analysis of meetings, and it's got a very, very nice, easy way of sharing with the team. And so I just feel like I don't have to worry about meeting notes anymore, and that's like what a gift! It's awesome.
Worth its weight in gold. Oh yeah,
yeah. I have it running for this just to see if there's any takeaways to bring back. Action.
Oh, nice.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm completely reliant on a very similar tool to Granola because it's just these meetings can go on for like an hour and a half, and a lot of it ends up not being actionable, right? It's just, you know how it is. After a holiday weekend, it's like, oh, where did you go? Oh, yeah, my daughter. Oh, my cousin, right? It's like, okay, let's just keep moving. Not that I don't enjoy meetings with my clients. For those that listen, love them. Happy Easter's coming up. Happy Passover, if that's more you, right?
Nice.
So, yes. All right, guys. Well, this was great. I'm going to continue to use Odds Agent I got to try to get it to boss around the other agents. That's got to be the next move.
Yeah. Boss them around.
All right. Is there anywhere else we should send people or just warp.dev?
Warp.dev. You can go to oz.dev if you want to directly learn about Oz. Ooh. It'll take you to something on Warp's site. Yeah, I was psyched we got that domain. And just check it out. We'd love early feedback. If you want to try the newest and latest stuff, you can join our preview Slack, and you get on an early build, you get early access, and instructions for that are, I don't know, they're somewhere on our website. Maybe Ben knows. But yeah, that's all.
Awesome. All right, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much for having us, Michael. This has been great.
Thank you. Guys, have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.